How can we reduce the gap between strategic decision and execution? Paulo Morgado's latest book, Strategy in Action, aims at answering this critical question. Strategy in Action is the result of the author's doctoral thesis on the issue and based on more than 24 hours of interviews with 15 CEOs from different countries and sectors and facing various business challenges. Strategy in Action will certainly help leaders and managers tackle the currently disruptive digital era with prompt and decisive action. For the time being, let's have a brief look at some key concepts explained in detail in the book. In the world of strategy, there are two apparently opposing worldviews, a building or architectural worldview and a dwelling or practical worldview. According to Chia and Rash, in the building worldview, cognition and mental representation precede meaningful action. In this worldview, there is a separation between the individual and the world, and thus the individual can be thought of as if detached from his or her surroundings. The building worldview is mostly linked with thought or reflection, with intelligence or analysis, and with decision or deliberation. In the dwelling worldview, however, according to these authors, the individual is intimately immersed and inextricably intertwined with his or her surroundings, and he or she is constituted by his or her everyday actions and interactions with the world. The dwelling worldview is mostly linked with action or experimentation, with intuition or experience, and with execution or emergence. Traditional approaches to strategy separate strategy formulation and decision-making from implementation or execution. But let's have a closer view at this conventional approach by way of an example. Tom is a successful manager at a car company. The company he works for has been struggling in the last few years and does not seem to fully recover. He is determined to change this, and so he needs to come up with that one idea that will revolutionize the car as we know it today, and that will help the company reach the leading position it once had. And so he goes to his office, locks himself in, not to be disturbed, and starts walking up and down the room until that moment of inspiration comes. In the building worldview, thought is what ignites strategy formulation, and it is reflective by nature. Now it is time for Tom to validate his idea. He will look at all the components and features of his car. He will also look at the nuts and bolts of the business model. And he mustn't forget the marketing campaign for the big launch. And so off he goes to crunch loads of numbers and analyze tons of data. Here, intelligence, which is the analytical, scientific mode of understanding and interacting with the world, follows. Now that all the data has been considered, that all the details have been worked out, it is time for Tom to call a meeting to communicate his decision, to tell the different departments of the organization, and tell them to implement ASAP. With decision, deliberative by nature, the strategy formulation process comes to an end and implementation follows. Thus, in the classical strategy approach, thought is what ignites strategy. Intelligence is then put to use, so as to analyze and validate all the data supporting the strategy. Finally, a decision is taken, which is then delegated to and deployed by different levels of the organization. In a nutshell, a thinking drives doing approach. But today, in a business environment characterized by volatility, complexity, and ambiguity, hard facts are oftentimes scarce and dubious after all. Strategists and managers can no longer rely on time-consuming, rational approaches alone if they want their strategy to succeed. Knowledge and insights generated or gathered while in action, either by experimenting, by experiencing, or by emergence, is key to strategy success. Managers and strategists can really benefit from a doing drives thinking approach. But how much of strategy can be formed while in action? Let's have a closer look at the dwelling worldview of strategic decision and execution. Back to our example. Here is Tom again. back to the drawing board, but this time he decides to do things slightly differently. He experiments by letting his mind wander and ideas to flow freely on the paper. When not convinced by what he sees, he discards his sketch and starts all over again. With each iteration, he discovers something he had not thought of before. New ideas emerge, and little by little, his truly new concept car starts to take shape. Action, according to Kaufman and Sorensen, prompts discovery, which in turn generates action, which leads to new discoveries in an everlasting loop. It is, thus, experimental by nature. Now Tom, instead of taking a detached position from the world, decides to go out and explore the outer world, fully engaging with it. Intuition is experiential. Through purposeful exploration or prospecting, intuition enables the direct capture of knowledge. It fosters that eureka moment. Now it is time for Tom to gather his multidisciplinary team and share his idea with them. Through discussion and deliberation with the different members of the team, they, together, refine Tom's initial idea. As a result of this collective intelligence, the idea morphs into something more tangible and closer to the final product. While executing, by sharing his idea with the team, by discussing and deliberating upon it, more and better insights emerge, and his idea gets closer to reality. To conclude, strategy formulation isn't something static. It is dynamic. It evolves through the acting and interacting with it. And so, it is necessary to combine both the building or architectural worldview and the dwelling or practical worldview during the dynamic formulation and formation of strategy. Since ideas do not come from a vacuum, it is in action that an individual can craft and perfect his or her thoughts. In turn, thought, as a reflective act, educates our actions, enabling us to better achieve our goals and preventing us from becoming dispersed dreamers. Intuition is eminently experiential. It permits the generation of patterns that will generate new actions that will lead to intuitions. In turn, intelligence provides the framework or frameworks that will permit the generation of educated and effective patterns. While executing, while pursuing a mark, which results from deliberative strategic decision, the individual comes across emergent strategic facts. This will, in turn, through relationalism, give rise to new deliberations for strategic direction. Bergson once said that one must act like a man of thought and think like a man of action. Most likely, he would not have refuted Paulo Morgado's idea that either strategy is educated action or it is nothing at all.